Can the Bucks pull themselves out of a 2-0 series deficit as we've seen them do a couple of times in the past, or is this one just simply a different story? Camille and I take a look at what went wrong
in game 2 against the Pacers. Don't know what happened there, but we gonna get to it, all right?
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. I'm Justin Garcia, joined as always by Camille Davis. We thank you for making this your first listen of the day and continuing to check out the Locked On Bucks newsletter. You can still sign up for free at lockedondaily.com. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Our start to the show today, Camille, was about as clunky as the starts to the game we've seen from the Bucks in this series. All right. Let's just rip the Band-Aid off. It's 2-0 right now. The Indiana Pacers are up and appear to be fully in control. We both picked the Bucks to win this series. We both said we were pretty confident. Have you changed your thought process on this series?
Not yet. Not yet. It has not looked as clean for the Bucks as I expected it to. Execution is still lacking in certain areas, but I've seen things in the first 2 games and heard some things from Doc after this game that give me a little bit more confidence going forward. If the Bucks can win game 3 and then game 4, you're right back into it. So game 3 now is the most important thing for the Milwaukee Bucks. That's what the focus needs to be on. Learning from game 2, going into game 3. So at this moment, I'm still not panicking. Has not been ideal, but not panicking. Need to see what happens in game 3. How about you?
I'm on the fence. So I mentioned last night the 2021 playoff run where you were down 2-0 against the Phoenix Suns in the finals and went on to win that series by winning 4 straight games. You were down 2-0 against the Brooklyn Nets in a series that kind of looked like the start to this series where you had a somewhat competitive loss. The games were flipped in game 1 and you were run off the floor. I think it ended up being a 39 or 40 point loss, but a game you trailed by 50 at one point in game 2. There are other things in play, injuries for the Brooklyn Nets, but the bigger part is it was a better roster that you had back in 2021. Doc made some comments after the game that you alluded to that I think gives me a little bit of hope, but I think we all know where it needs to start, and we're seeing all the comments pour in now as we are live. The starting lineup. That's been the biggest issue for this team is digging yourself a hole and you put in this work to get out of it, but ultimately it's just too little too late. You got it down to 2, and then that big shot or big 2 shots by Pascal Siakam and then Andrew Nembhard, who for my money has been the best player so far in this series with what he's done on both ends of the floor. But the starting lineup is what everybody is most focused on. And as you mentioned, Doc Rivers, I think, basically told us the answer without revealing all of it last night.
What do you feel like the issue has been for that starting unit?
I think defensively, just getting beat off the dribble, and it's everyone, So, and then I thought that unit did score, but we couldn't get a stop. And then that unit also had those 4 turnovers to start the game. I thought we forced a lot of stuff there. So I haven't watched the film. I'm going to go back and look at it. But there's changes we can make, and there's things we can do.
It feels like the other.
Him saying there's changes we can make, I take that as we are making changes. And he was asked later on in the press conference, too, about what is it that you guys are going to do? And said, I'm not giving you the answer now. Like, number one, I got to watch the film, but I'm also not putting this out there 3 days in advance of the series. So I take that as they're making changes to the starting lineup. We both talked about Dame's return. We didn't know if he was going to start. I do wonder if part of that starting lineup was We're already changing things with Dame. Let's not just completely overhaul this thing and see how it works.
Mhm.
But I think the answer is staring you in the face. You have to make a change to the starting lineup to match up with this Indiana Pacers team. So whether that's one move, multiple moves, what is that change or those changes that need to be made?
Well, changing the starting lineup comes in place because the Bucks have to get off to better starts. That's been a problem in this series so far. A slow start in game one, a slow start in game two. Then in game two, you also had a slow start in the third quarter when that starting group is back out there again. And the Bucks have played well in spurts throughout this series so far. It's just that they have found themselves in a position where they are in a hole already, and they're spending a lot of the game just trying to dig out of what happened before. So if they can start the games better, they would put themselves in a better position to be able to actually finish and get a victory. And in that Doc Rivers press conference, I think one of the first things he was even asked was just about those slow starts. And he also said, like, yeah, we've gotten up to 2 poor starts. We got to make an adjustment there for sure. And once I heard Doc say, like, we have to make an adjustment in regards to how we're starting the games, it gave me some confidence to be like, okay, we're going to finally see a change to the starting lineup. And I've been someone who was like, I think that Brook Lopez can play in this series. Just the minutes have to be a bit lower for Brook Lopez. I think he played under 20 minutes in game 2. Yeah, 16 minutes for Brook Lopez in game 2. That felt about right. Now it's just getting the order of operations together of when he's actually on the court, trying to just start off in a better position. So I think it's time. And some could argue the time was already had. Like some said you shouldn't have even had it in game 1, couldn't have had it in game 2. Game 1, I can give you some credit, like some leeway with. Game 2 was a little bit like, all right. And now we're here at game 3, you're down 0-2, and now you're in a must-win situation.
Yeah, I think it's multiple changes that you have to make to match up with them. We talked about Dame's return and what that does, defensively, and that you have to shift things around where you're looking at Taurean Prince trying to take on guys in the backcourt. And we've seen a couple of times this year, he's playing out of position. It's what do you expect when that's what you're asking of him? I think one of the bigger issues is, and this has been who Taurean Prince is throughout the season, he's a little bit gun shy at times, that he'll pass up some of those open looks to wait for an even better shot. And the way things have started to build in this series, you have to take those looks. You have to get up those threes. Somebody asked me last night too, how can you say there's any hope in this series after you lose the first 2 games? You look like you did in game 1. And what can you point to that worked in game 2? That to me was the interesting part in game 2 was statistically, if you look up and down at everything, this was a pretty even game. And yet it felt like throughout the course of those 48 minutes, you were down 20 points the entire time. I mean, I was somewhat optimistic at halftime when it was 8, and even at the end of the first quarter that it was a 10-point disadvantage, to think, man, this feels like this should be 20 or more that Indiana is up. The field goal percentage, Bucks outshot the Pacers. You basically matched them on threes. You out-rebounded them. But it boils down to, you really only had 2 impactful players in the game and turnovers. So that's the other place where it starts. The defense and how you line up with the Indiana Pacers, but turning the ball over, you're not going to hear me say it's ever good to turn the ball over against any team in the postseason, but especially against this Indiana team, because number one, they don't turn the ball over, especially Tyrese Halliburton. And when you give them live ball turnovers, it's a team that already wants to play fast. You're gift wrapping them fast break opportunities, getting out in transition and putting it on your defense. So that was the biggest thing to me, was you started out in a hole with some of your defensive matchups. Once again, we saw lineups that work. And I think there's where Doc Rivers is coming from when he talks about the confidence that he still has in this series. But you have to protect the ball. You got good looks against Indiana in both of these games, but you have to protect the ball and start to limit the good looks that the Pacers are getting as well. I'll get your thoughts on that and mention Doc Rivers after the game said he remains very confident in the Bucks' chances in this series. Is that coach speak? Is that Doc Rivers actually seeing something and having a reason for this confidence? We will get into that discussion coming up after this on Locked On Bucks. Time to talk to you about our friends over at Game Time. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Game Time, you can be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off moves closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem that code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, confidence was one of the stories that came from the post game here for Doc Rivers. Camille, very confident to be exact.
Going into game 3, you mentioned trending in the right direction, but also starting to get some of the struggles there. Clearly, you've switched it up in the second half, right? To go with, I mean, I guess you just start game 3 and trust that adjustments will be made and things.
We'll just see. You know, we have time. We have 48 hours. I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing right now because I don't know. You know, but we'll figure it out. I'm very confident about this series.
Very confident. Very. You'll hear a lot of projection of confidence. No coach is going to come out and say, well, guys,
That's it.
We're cooked. Like, I'm going to be the same as everything we're seeing in the comments now. It's over. Let's look into trading guys. You should probably fire me. You're going to kind of walk the line, but I don't know. I didn't take that as pure coach speak. Now, is it delusion? That's certainly something else to debate, but I don't take what Doc Rivers said there as being, well, I just got to say something to motivate the troops. And, you know, I go back to the only other time we've heard something like that with that tenor from Doc Rivers was when they started 2-8. And he immediately shut down the question and said, we are going to make the playoffs. We're not concerned about that. So we'll see. But the feeling within that locker room and with Doc Rivers and the rest of the coaching staff, I know, is confidence yet. Still down 2-0 in this series.
That's how it has to be. The series are long. Like it's easy to get excited after one game, after 2 games. But we have seen situations where the start doesn't equate to how the series will finish. And you have to keep the main thing going forward. And as mentioned, for the Bucks, you didn't steal a game on the road. The Pacers did what they were supposed to do and they protected home court. Now the series slips back over to Milwaukee, and now it's on you to protect home court. And as long as you still have games in front of you, you don't get 4 wins and because you won your first 2. You don't get bonus wins for winning your first 2. So for the team, yeah, you have to continue to have that confidence. You have to learn from what did not work in the first 2 games, try to make those adjustments and get better in those areas to come out in game 3 better. But yeah, I'd actually be disappointed to hear anyone in this locker room, whether it's Doc or the players, just act like it's already over, especially a team, as we have seen this season, not give up, get punched in the mouth numerous times. Sometimes they punch themselves in the mouth along with the other team punching them. But this Bucks team always seems to find a way to kind of get back up and at least put in the effort to continue going forward. We've seen them have crazy comebacks. We just did against the Timberwolves. We saw them start the season 2-8, finish top 6 in the East. Like, this is a team where while they have been consistently inconsistent, one thing about them is the confidence level and just the effort that they come out with, in the sense of it's not over until it's actually over. And they're going to need that going forward. And as we've mentioned as well, they're going to need to be better. In addition to that, like, yes, there are definitely lineup changes that should be made, but the player, like, they have to execute better.
Yeah. And, you know, I think we just start with the lineups too. You gave your answer. I didn't give mine, but Taurean Prince and Brook Lopez played 19 and 16 minutes respectively. I've said for the longest time, I don't really care about who starts the game. It's who's playing more minutes and who's closing the game. And I still largely stand behind that. But what we're seeing in this series is the starts that Indiana has gotten off to, that's proving to be too much for the Bucks. So you can just ill afford to put yourself in that spot that at this point you have to make a change to the starting lineup. And those comments we played from Doc Rivers before, it all but confirms they're going to make a change. I would change both of those guys. I would go with Bobby Portis in the starting lineup, and I would go with AJ Green in the starting lineup, where you're going with the front line of Giannis, Bobby, and Kuz, and AJ Green and Damian Lillard in the backcourt. You find the minutes for Brook Lopez because there is still some value here, but you have to dictate the situation that he comes into and figure out, where are we at? Where are the minutes that make the most sense for him? And I do think this is probably a 15-minute or so per game series for Brook Lopez going forward here. Taurean Prince, probably the same story, because your most effective guys have been, guys like AJ Green, Gary Trent Jr., Bobby Portis, and Giannis in this series. So that's what you need to lean into. And that's kind of the bigger issue here, which right now is not the time for this discussion. It's an off-season thing, but just how much this roster has really atrophied the past couple of years. And it's been a product of a number of things. A group that's getting older, some of the moves that you had to make, some that didn't pan out. We can criticize the Chris Middleton trade up and down, but the fact of the matter is that trade signaled the Bucks no longer had confidence in Chris Middleton to remain at that level. And to not only that, availability is the best ability of them all. That was where their confidence was shaken, in his availability. And, we can say, well, you traded him too late, and that's probably true. But unfortunately, you were handcuffed because of things like the second apron and Chris Middleton's contract status, not being able to trade him a couple of years ago because he was a free agent and just signed. So this has been a combination of all those things that gets you to this spot where you still have Giannis in his prime, but you look at the roster that you have surrounding him, and nobody's going to make the case this is one of the best rosters in the league. You're pinning all your hopes on Giannis and Damian Lillard and finding the right role players. So at this point, those role players, that's what you have to lean into. But, Camille, the biggest difference is it's a Pacers team whose starting lineup makes a lot of sense, and they have gotten impact from their bench players. The Bucks starting lineup, we've talked through the issues. You're getting an impact from your bench guys, but it's not to the level that you're seeing from Indiana.
It's not, and that's also been part of the problem here for the Bucks, because, for example, going into the playoffs, somebody who we talked about as being the X factor for the series before we even knew that Dame was coming back was Kevin Porter Jr., highlighting the way that he was playing in a Milwaukee Bucks uniform, as well as the way that he was playing down the stretch here when the Bucks won the last 8 games of the season to close it out. And understanding this is his first playoff appearance, so things can be a little bit different, but the Bucks are going to need a lot more from Kevin Porter Jr. than what they got from him yesterday in Game 2. I think he had like 3 turnovers in his first stint in the game, just some out of control shot attempts, getting beat at the point of attack by TJ McConnell, just a lot of different things that were piling up. And the role players are the guys who can really swing a series here. And it's not just to pile on Kevin Porter Jr., it's just to use him as an example. You mentioned Taurean Prince just putting the ball on the floor a little bit too often. And I honestly want to shout out Bobby Portis for his play in Game 2, because my critique of Bobby in Game 1 was that he was a little too hesitant when it came to shooting the ball. The Pacers have been doing a fantastic job with their closeouts, with their rotations, and they're closing out quick and hard. So with that being said, you can't hesitate or take your time with the shot. That's why I was like, hey, I think AJ Green should be playing even more, which I was a little disappointed to see his playing time in Game 2, because he showed that he was somebody where if he gets that sliver of space, he has no hesitation in letting that shot fly. And the Bucks need that from guys who are going to be out there as the role guys around Giannis, around Dame. So guys have to be quick. So if you can't do that, time is running short for, all right, we got another game, try to figure this out. Like, nah, like the Pacers did what they had to do at home, winning those 2 home games. And now the pressure is on you to go home and do the exact same thing. So for Game 3, you've got to come out there and win. You've got to put your best guys out there. And we've seen so far through the series what is and what isn't working. I love the Mind the Game podcast with LeBron and now Steve Nash. And he mentioned that Game 1s, he's like, sometimes those were fill-out games. A lot of things can happen in Game 1. It's Game 2 where you're trying to get it together. And he mentioned sometimes Game 2s are also fill-it-out games. He said, you don't want that because you can mess around and lose a series that way. But sometimes that's the way it shakes out. So the Bucks have to learn from these first 2 games. And I think there was a lot to take away from game 2 and moving into game 3, making changes to the starting lineup, making changes to the rotations, getting the right guys on the court. Because one more thing I'll say about the rotations and lineups was, I know it was Dame's first game back, wasn't quite sure what the minutes would be looking like for him, but in the playoffs, I don't want to see times on the court where there is not Giannis or Dame out there. One of them need to be on the court at all times going forward.
Yeah, that was notable. 2 times we saw that in the game. And Doc, even said afterwards about Damian Lillard and cardio and his game shape of, he played 37 minutes, and I know he was gassed, but I knew we had 2 days off, and I just wanted to kind of run it out of him and get him up to shape. So knowing that, especially, you can't have any stretch of time, even if it's 30 seconds, where there's no Giannis or no Dame on the floor for the remainder of this series. So, look, the Pacers won both their home games, and as down as things are right now, if the Bucks win both of theirs, it's a much, much different scenario. Now, if the Bucks lose one of those 2 games, then it's starting to get pretty dark pretty early. I will acknowledge that. But it is still, in the eyes of Doc Rivers, a long series. So he had one other interesting thing to say on that front. We'll play those comments and start to take a look ahead to game number 3 after this on Locked On Bucks. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With Fire TV's 4K streaming, you can watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and so much more. And you can play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. If you've already got a console, a Fire TV 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with you, allowing you to take yours and your kids' games wherever you plug in. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller, both required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, and Fire TV Cube. All right, so it is not looking great right now for the Bucks, down 2-0 with the way these 2 games have gone. But as we mentioned, if you win your home games, if you do what you're supposed to do, you at least make this a long series. And when you fall down 2-0, the easy inclination is to say, well, that's a wrap. This is going 4 or 5. Not in the eyes of Doc Rivers.
In general, to fall down 2-0, I mean, in a short series now at this point. So,
I look at it as a long series. We haven't played a home game. Yeah, so it's almost like we're 2-8, and someone said, no one makes the playoffs when they're 2-8, but it's the same thing to me, right? We have to go home and take care of business, and then we can talk.
Well, there it is, the comparison to the 2-8 start as well. And I mean, we've all heard that adage too. A playoff series doesn't start until a road team wins. I kind of view it as like, okay, you got an extension on the project of like, doesn't look great. I'm not done yet. Give me an extension and I promise I'll get it done. Fine. Here's the extension. Now you got to get this project done. So now the Bucks have to win their 2 home games.
They do. There's no sugarcoating that. There is no way around that. You have to. Like, I know you talk often about like must-win games and how during the regular season you don't tend to like to use that language. We're in the playoffs now, and this is a Bucks team down 0-2.
So is Friday a must-win game?
Yes. In my opinion, Friday is a must-win game for the Bucks because you got to continue to protect home court. Like, if you don't win both of these games at home, you already are in a hole going into this 0-2. if you split at home or you lose, like if you lose both at home, well, you just gonna stay at home at that point. But if you split at home, or if you know what I mean, like it's you are in a position where there is no more room for or no more margin for error for this Bucks team. And we've talked about how this team compared to last year's team has more options, which I'm glad about, which continues to give me some like, man, I could still see a way for them to win this series. But again, the execution has to be a lot better for them. And this is a must-win situation. I mentioned how it's the first playoff appearance for like a Michael Porter Jr. or not Michael Porter Jr. Jesus, that's the Nuggets. Kevin Porter Jr. here in Milwaukee. And you see some of the nerves that tend to come with that. So for them, they have to put that away, understand game 3, and it's needed. It's needed. Like you have to get this game here. So again, you put what happened behind you, you learn from it. And you have to come out in game 3 and execute better, because offensively, I think the Bucks looked better in game 2 than they did in game 1. So like, yeah, they figured some things out there, but the defense remains a problem. Like you can't open the game up and give up 40 points in the first quarter. Like, and again, maybe making some changes to that starting lineup and the guys who are in the game can help with that. But the Bucks defense has to really dial in and get better.
Did I see correctly too that was the most points the Pacers have scored in a quarter in playoff history?
Oh, I did not see that.
Yeah, I mean, that wouldn't surprise me with the way things are going, but it's also kind of startling in that 40 is it? Like that's all you've had. Okay. Look, I just talked about this somewhere else yesterday on a different show. I am inclined to say must-win games are only when you're facing elimination, but you lose game 3, you're like that is basically elimination in terms of what we've seen. No team has come back from down 3-0 in a series. So I'm kind of there that this is a must-win game, and I expect the Bucks to play with that urgency. I expect to see some pretty drastic changes to the starting lineup and the rotations overall. I mean, a guy we did not mention on the show so far, Ryan Rollins, was not in the rotation. We talked about it when we knew Dame was coming back and said, look, I hope this doesn't come at the expense of Ryan Rollins, and I hope you can still find some minutes for Ryan Rollins here. We didn't see that in game 2. And I do think what you got to do is lean into, we have to play a contrasting style to the Indiana Pacers. I know they have youth. The Bucks do more youth and athleticism, but you can't outpace the Pacers. That is the way they have played all season long. You have to lean into your defense. And I'm not saying play half-court games, but you got to win this series on defense and have Giannis and Dame be the best players on the floor with your defense locked in. And I think Ryan Rollins is going to be an important figure in that. Kevin Porter Jr. bounced back somewhat nicely in the second half.
Yeah.
But that was a disastrous first half from Kevin Porter Jr., and it came off a disastrous game 1 from Kevin Porter Jr. And that was one of the things we had brought up, too, going into the playoffs of, look, this guy's been a great spark for you in the regular season. This is his first taste of the playoffs, and that edge that he plays with, it's a fine line where sometimes it can teeter a little bit out of whack. And look, we had the conversation. It's another one we'll have in the offseason about what is Kevin Porter Jr.'s value and what's he going to command. All 3 of us, you, me, and Frank, said all the talk out there, he's going to get $20 million. It ain't happening because of the state of affairs in the NBA with other teams' caps and what we're seeing of you're going to get max deals, you're going to get vet minimums, basically not a whole lot of in between. And especially with performances like this in the first 2 games, there ain't a $20 million per year contract out there for Kevin Porter Jr. right now, which maybe it's a good thing for the Bucks in hopes of retaining him.
Yeah, and I mean, we're going to have a little bit more time throughout the week to continue to talk about like players who we need to see more out of, so on and so forth. But one thing that I am thinking about come game 3 with what we've seen so far from some of the role players for the Milwaukee Bucks is that generally role players tend to play better at home. And that's one thing that kind of at least hope on a little bit is that coming back home in Milwaukee, where it's a friendly crowd behind you, that you get some better play from your role guys, in addition to the fact that, hey, this is the third game. You already got a taste what the playoffs are like. You know what's expected of you. You know what's going to be allowed, what's not allowed. So you have to come out and play a little bit stronger. So I do think coming home is a situation where it could be really positive for the Bucks, role players to be able to get into the environment and play there. But ultimately, again, guys just got to execute better. And I do think leaning on that defense part, because the reason that Doc enjoys and likes to employ this big starting lineup and initially is trying to out physical teams, to be the more physical, the bigger team. And even with this lineup in the game, they haven't been able to set the tone physically with that grouping. So it's like you have to try to find something different. The over helping has been a problem, or guys getting beat off the dribble, and then here comes the help, and then the guy can't recover to whoever they left on the rotation to help with the drive. So they have to be stronger at point of attack. They have to be tighter with their own rotations when they get into scramble. And I am hoping that for some of the role players who are going to be tasked with providing big sparks for this Bucks team, that playing at home can also help with that, in addition to making some lineup changes and rotation changes.
Yeah, and look, that size, it wasn't like great, but it was great by Bucks standards. They had basically like 30% offensive rebounding rates. They were close to 80% defensive. They did a good job on the glass. And that's the other thing you got to lean into is crisp offense, execute on that end, get the rebounds, and don't turn the ball over. That's the way you're going to start to turn this series around now. Half-court offense continues to be a big strength for the Pacers in this series. And that's the other thing that's not quite as discussed, but that's the biggest thing too, that has to be cleaned up for this team the next couple of games here to extend this this series. So I didn't expect to walk into a lot of optimism in the chat here. I was a little surprised to see as many Pacers fans as we have in the comments.
They've been in my mentions too.
Yeah. Look, you get the vibe that comes with being down 2-0 in a series. It's something you've experienced before. It's something Giannis has experienced before. Just win on Friday and take this one game at a time. Get into the win column, put a little bit more pressure on the Pacers of, okay, are the Bucks going to even up this series, and continue to just lean into what worked? Because if there was a good thing to come from these first two games of this series, it's that, okay, this is what's worked for us, but more importantly, these are the things that have not. We cannot do this, whether it's the way you play or personnel on the floor. You have the answers there. So now you got to lean into those things.
Could not agree more. Could not agree more. It all turns to Friday now for the Bucks. You can't go back and replay the games that you lost. You can only try to learn from them and go forward. So it's going to be one of those weeks here where it's going to be a lot of talking for sure. Pacers fans are taking some laps right now, which I get, going up 2-0, especially hearing how the Bucks fans were coming into this game. I get it. But there's still a lot more basketball to be played, and for the Bucks, that's a good thing. But they have to be better. Otherwise, it's going to be over pretty quickly.
Yeah, and you did a better job in transition against the Pacers. So baby steps. That's one of the positives we'll take there as well, is the numbers weren't way out of whack as they were in game number one. I think the Pacers only created an additional points per 100 possessions in transition, which was very middle of the pack. So the Bucks did a better job there. We saw a few comments come in, and we can save it for shows later in the week to dig into a little more. But it is one thing I wondered too is, okay, knowing Indiana's going to get out and run regardless, you have the size, and especially now that you have all of the bigs at your disposal, should you just start to lean into, let's crash offensive boards and let's start to score and make the Pacers take the ball out of the net and win those possessions? Because we know even on makes, Indiana's going to get out there and run. So let's see if we can use our size to our advantage. And again, near 30% offensive rebounding rate in game two.
Possibly. I mean, that's something that we heard Doc mention when Kyle Kuzma was acquired, of like, hey, we have someone who we think could actually crash the boards in addition to Giannis, because they have the speed to get back if they don't get that rebound. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see. And I think that's an interesting discussion to continue to have throughout the week, of just different adjustments that the Bucks can make, and if that's one that they should try to lean into going forward.
All right, Friday night is a big one as the series returns to Milwaukee. 7:00 tip on Friday. We will preview that matchup over the course of the next couple of days here and see if we get an update on any lineup changes that we can expect in these next 2 days. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Famous last words, but your level of confidence in the Bucks in this series. And if you think it's over, how many games is this series going to last? So leave your thoughts in our YouTube comments. That'll do it for today's show. A rough one. For Camille, I'm Justin. We'll talk with you guys once again tomorrow on Locked On Bucks.